Welcome back, everyone, to a brand new movie analysis and breakdown of another brand new movie just released by Disney Pixar smack dab in the middle of Christmas Day. This was a welcome Christmas present indeed, and this in fact was the releasing of Disney Pixar Soul, a marvelous animation that had the classic storytelling genius that Pixar Studios has always had. In today's video, we break down the Soul movie with all of its highs and lows, climax moments, and my special media sense that identifies the most genius moments of media making in the newest Disney Pixar movie. It's no doubt a brilliant movie and critics are already raving, so I guess I might get started as well. Before we start today's media movie spotlight analysis, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you don't want your soul taken. With that out of the way, let's start the Soul movie breakdown and analysis, and why exactly I think it's one of Disney's best movies to close off the 2020 year. I also think it's worth mentioning that this is a life-changing movie for everyone of all ages to watch because it truly changed the way I think about life today. Almost every aspect of the movie made me think about something deeper than just in terms of the basic storyline of the film. It was actually something much more than that, and I think Soul was more of a guide on exactly how anyone should live their lives, a beacon in the darkness to anyone living on this planet and how to truly live life. Just based off of the first look, anyone might tell off Soul to be a cheesy movie in a cheesy niche, but Pixar has really pulled off something else here. Not just their great world building, but getting at one of the superior themes of life, and not just focusing on the actual story when so many franchises are all about just that. I think it's one of the great things almost every Pixar movie has been able to achieve, pulling on the heartstrings of their audience and enticing them to watch every last bit of it. After the movie ended, it almost made me plead for an end credit, something which Disney is very accustomed to doing, and something which I desperately needed to confirm a few main points of the story, and if there would be a second round. The first scene I remember vividly off the top of my head is The Great Beyond and its equivalent, The Great Before. As suggested by the names, one can guess these are the hypothetical fields before and after a period known as life, and in the movie is what all of these tiny little souls are training and practicing to live life well when they have the chance. To most of those little green things, life is seen as an intermediary, a golden age between the two soul realms that basically decides the rest of your status and position. The world building in this is great because it shows each of the realms to be exactly what it is. Basically an earth, but without any real feelings, emotions, and the daily hassle of what we call living life. Something we view as actually a chore rather than an experience. And I'm saying this because I can totally relate to the main idea Soul is trying to bring about in this movie, and I was just so awestruck that I couldn't help but make this video. Meanwhile, in this Soul world, the great before, Joe Gardner, or the main character, ends up here by accident, breaking the natural cycle of life. Instead, Joe Gardner goes to the Soul area before they actually come to life in a desperate and perhaps selfish bid to get back to his body on Earth so he can make it in time for a gig he just earned with a great jazz musician. Here we are shown the basic aspects of the Great Before, a basically template canvas of a world that exists just as a housing for souls before they are ready to go into life. These aspects include sorting out and giving each soul personalities and best of all a purpose as they go into life. Or so we thought until near the end of the movie it was revealed that the Great Before doesn't give one a purpose, and that the only purpose in life is actually living life. This dialogue hit me so greatly that I stopped thinking about for a second, constantly joining the traffic jam of studiers, practicers, and people trying to get ahead of each other for just one bit. Soul pulls upon a common misconception that to have a good life you have to do one single thing and focus on that one single thing to be great at it. This is not true at all, as Joe Gardner later finds that out himself when living life with the second character he meets, known as Soul 22. This character is also amazingly developed due to the fact that she, out of millions of souls sorted out every day, still hasn't found what is known as her spark. The spark in Soul is known as the last objective a soul in the Great Before has to reach before they obtain an Earth Pass, or basically a pass that allows them to finally descend down to Earth. To understand what the spark means metaphorically, we'll have to take a step back and understand how souls get from one place to another. First, a soul is procured in the great before, having a disc-shaped object placed on their person. This disc-shaped object is like a palette, but in this case symbolically meaning a palette of emotions. Souls are given a few different personalities, and finally there's one space on the palette remaining where they have to fill up with a spark. At first, Joe Gardner and I myself thought that the spark meant a talent or purpose a soul had to find before they could pass into Earth. There are two halls in the great before, the Hall of You and the Hall of Everything. Here, everything possible in life is stored, from instruments to rocket ships, in an effort to get these souls to find their spark, so their palette becomes an Earth pass and they can go to Earth. At first, Joe and Soul 22, his soulmate or basically a mentorship program, scour many objects, whereas Joe's purpose is to get his soul an Earth pass so he himself can steal the Earth pass and get back to his own body. The contrasting of these two characters was what really made this animation one of the greatest of all time, as on one hand you had Joe Gardner, who wanted to desperately get back to Earth and join the mad traffic jam as I mentioned earlier, and on the other hand, you have Soul 22, who has been in the Great Before for thousands of years and still not able to obtain her Earth Pass. Meaning Soul 22 did not want to go to Earth and instead forever stay in the Great Before. These two characters' agendas conflicted until they found a mutual decision that could benefit one another. One way or another, they soon get back to Earth, but Joe Gardner ends up in the cat's body, whereas Soul 22 ends up in Joe Gardner's body. The old switcheroo, however, this is where the beautiful storytelling of Pixar starts. Soul 22 learns to use Joe's body, and though she is adamant and doesn't want to go to Earth, learns the pleasures of the planet as she explores it. Joe's purpose, meanwhile, is to get back into his own body so he can make it for the gig. This gets to the point where Soul 22 is forced to live as Joe for one day, meeting all the people he usually meets and more. This is where the moment and click happens, the climax of the story for me. As Joe gets to see how he acts in usual life from another perspective, he sees the people he usually meets with are acting more friendly towards his body, more interactive, and more enjoyable with him. Obviously for Joe, he thinks this is awfully peculiar as they're never that enjoyable with him, and these humans have no way of knowing that their souls have actually switched. For this one, I would draw particularly on the case of the barber, where Soul 22, masquerading as Joe, has a heart-to-heart conversation with the whole shop. In the end, the barber walks Joe out the door and is extremely happy about their conversation, telling him, "It's nice not to talk about jazz once, and you never asked me how my life felt before." Meanwhile, Joe in the cat's body is there and realizes how self-absorbed he is through an outsider's perspective. I think this is Pixar's way of saying you never realize how you show up in another person's brain unless you live in the other person's shoes. So Joe being a cat and getting to witness his whole life from essentially not his own perspective really gets Joe to understand the true way life should be led. Additionally, the character building on Soul 22 is marvelous as well, seeing as she is slowly warming up to life on Earth. Through each of his closest friends, Joe slowly gets an idea that a purpose is different from what people enjoy, as he learns that his barber wanted to be a veterinarian but ended up a barber. It dawns on Joe that everyone else in life isn't necessarily always doing their purpose, and in fact that rarely happens, and I felt this was a premise of the entire show. As the story unfolds, Joe is able to play in his gig but realizes the sheer fun Soul 22 had while steering his body and how he never really gets to live his own fun in his own life. I mean, for Joe, it's just get on the subway, teach middle school band, and perform gigs, a hardened routine. The moment Soul 22 got in Joe's body, there were no rules, no strict loop for her as she did stuff she thought was fun while not caring about other people's perspectives. This was a genius move by Pixar, and ultimately it showed Joe how to live life. In the end, he sacrifices his own life for Soul 22, who he feels should have a chance to live the wonders of Earth after getting over his own selfishness he had in him from the start. However, because of this one man finally cracking the deeper code in life, he is given a second chance by the celestial beings in the Great Before, and gets a second chance to this time live life a proper way. And I guess that's all I had to say about the movie Soul and how I potentially think it's an Oscar contender for animation. As always, if you like this video, subscribe for more movie analysis and more movies about media. It's Mr. Media signing off.